Hi and welcome to my channel. May has been an incredible month for me and my books, and that's why I'm actually making 2 of these videos this month. Mainly because I don't have the time to film them all in the same video. But that's a luxury. We'll start off with the first book I finished, and that's Independent People by Halldór Laxness. This is set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where we meet the sheep farmer Bjartur on Iceland. He has been fighting for his independence for 18 years, and it's basically a story about man versus nature and also everyone around him. I thought the theme of independence wasn't going to be that much in my face when I read the book, but it really was. That was the main theme. All the choices Bjartur makes is all about being independent and not be dependent on anyone else. The amount of sheep he has, if he's going to buy a cow or not, if he's going to build a bigger house and take up a loan, it's all tied in with the theme of independence. Bjartur is more accustomed to talking to his sheep than actual humans, and this is something that makes the book kind of funny, because he has a strange way of communicating with other people. So even though it's sad and sometimes heartbreaking, it's also fun. And sometimes I felt that it was difficult to know if I should dislike Bjartur or like him. But that's something that makes this book great. I found the language to be beautiful but also kind of challenging at times, mostly because it's written in English and translated in this old-fashioned way. But nevertheless, I liked the way it was written. The book starts out with Icelandic folklore and superstition, and this is something I would have liked to see more of, just because I enjoyed it so much. So the people in the book are superstitious and the theme follows throughout, but I would like to have seen it taken a bigger part of the novel. To sum this book up, I would say it's a very timeless novel about man versus nature and a man's fight for survival and for independence. I think this is one of those novels that will be with me for the rest of my life. Even though I didn't love it, I surely have done a lot of thinking around the main character and his behavior, and there are very many timeless tales and themes in this book that just makes you think. So that was the first book I finished this month. Then I decided to try a new audiobook, and the choice fell on A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I do not know how to pronounce that last name. That book seemed to be one of the most hyped ones on my Instagram, so I decided I wanted to be a part of that hype. And my prejudice was that either I was going to love that book or hate it. The first thing I would say is that audiobook version I listened to was the best one I've listened to so far. The person reading the book was excellent and the audio quality was great. So it started off being a really good experience just in the way it was presented. The book starts off in the middle of the woods where we meet our main character Feyre. She is a poor girl living together with her father and her 2 sisters. She's currently out hunting and she ends up killing a wolf. But this wolf isn't really a wolf, it turns out to be a fairy, which is not a good thing for her. Fairies and people don't have the best relationship, and a couple of days later another fairy shows up at their door and he basically says that she can be killed or abducted. And so she chooses abduction. And this is where the story starts, and it really is the Beauty and the Beast all over again. This is my first YA fantasy novel, and I would say that all my prejudices were correct, but I'll start off at the beginning. At the beginning we meet her in the woods while she's hunting, and this is really atmospheric. When she's cold, I felt cold. When she's hungry, I felt hungry. And it was really engaging. I finally thought that this was the series where I'm going to read all the books and be one of those with a very, very highly colorful shelf behind me. Also, she has a useless father and 2 terrible sisters, which makes it so easy to side with our protagonist. And she has a lot going for her at this time. Also, Feyre is a complete badass. She goes hunting, she has no problems being alone, cold and hungry and suffering. I would say that I like this novel better before she is abducted, and she is abducted very, very shortly after you start reading the book, so that's not a good thing. But it just became too much of a romance novel after a while, and this was of course my prejudice. There was a lot of sexy beasts, you might say, which if you like sexy beasts, this is definitely the book for you, but it didn't feel like the book for me at that time. I more like the badass girl going around slaying people and animals. But I found the story to be easy to navigate to. There are a lot of names, but it was not a problem keeping track of all the names. Also, the different kingdoms wasn't a big problem for me, which surprised me a bit. And it's really written in a way that makes reading fun, because it's kind of simplistic, but also there's a lot of things going on which I enjoyed. All in all, a cool story with a known plot, but I would have liked it better with a little less 50 Shades of Grey. That being said, I liked it so much that I decided to go straight on to the next one in the series, but when I started that book I found out that maybe it's better for me to take a break. I was going for a walk and I desperately needed an audiobook for that walk, and so I started scrolling my audiobook app, and I stopped with Men du ser ikke syk ut by Ragnhild Holmås, which I translate to But You Don't Look Sick. I don't know if it's translated yet, I don't think so, but it's all about this young woman that has all things going for her in her life, but suddenly one day she doesn't feel that well. And this goes on for days, and one day she is diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. This is a non-fiction, and it's the author herself talking about her and her experiences around her disease. This is a shorter book, and I listened to it in about 4 hours, and I did that all in one day. And I'm very happy I did, because I truly think that this is one of the most important books I've read. Just because it's so easy to forget that people are struggling without you knowing it. And this goes for both mental and physical disabilities that you might not know about. And it's just a really, really important reminder. And the author does an exceptional job of describing how she feels and how she manages her energy. One example is that she compares her energy levels to money, and how she can spend energy or money one day and then she doesn't have anything to spend the day afterwards, or how she over time can spend a lot of energy but then she has to take up a loan and that can put her out for a longer period of time. It's just a way of describing it that I thought was very useful. The book is told with humor, so it's not a very sad book in that way, and I think this is important to get the message across. Basically, this book makes you think twice before you judge anyone for anything. There might be a lot of things you don't know about, and thus this book will be with me for a long time. And I absolutely loved it. Then we're going over to a new hype book, and it's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is about woman that works for a magazine, and one day she is asked to do a portrait of Evelyn Hugo. She's very surprised because Evelyn Hugo is a big movie star and she's a small-time reporter at this magazine, and from the start you get the feeling of there is something that the reporter isn't being told. So Evelyn Hugo was a huge movie star and she's now pretty old, and the whole book is them two talking about the past and talking about Evelyn Hugo's life, and you're all the time waiting for the big reveal. This is a prime example of a book that's going to be filmatized, and maybe they've already started, I don't know. It was fun and inventive and nothing like I really thought it would be in the start. You have these newspaper cutouts in the book that's supposed to talk about what happened after you read the chapter, which I found very useful at times, but also a bit exhausting after a while. I was highly entertained up until about 60 to 70% of the book. They sort of go through one husband at a time, and after a while I felt like it was kind of repetitive and I began being a bit bored. So I really loved the start and the first half of the book, and then I waited for the big reveal to happen, but I was a bit exhausted when the reveal finally happened. So I enjoyed reading it, but it was not more than okay for me. Then I finally got around to read my third Taya Vesos novel, and this is The Seed. So the story is about a stranger that comes to this small island and suddenly people die. That's basically it. It's not a long book. And I think what the book is trying to do is talk about evil without talking about the evil itself. You sort of get to just view the evil from the outside without being in the middle of it. And it's written in a beautiful way. I really like how Taya Vesos writes, and that has been something that I've thought about and talked about earlier, that Taiveso's language is a language which I just love without actually knowing why. I felt like the language in the book was very urgent. It felt like it was pushing me towards feeling more stressed out, and it really helped. But at times it was kind of too chaotic, and for me it felt like it lost direction in a sense. Also, the symbolism in the book, which Taivesos is famous for, was kind of a bit too much for me at least. I would rather him describing what actually happened than the symbolism around the things that happened, but that's just me. Nevertheless, I really love when I read a book and I fall in love with the language and I reflect on the things that are being written. And on several occasions I read the things that were written in this book more than once, and that seldom happens. The last book I'm going to talk about today is a book that has quite a few similarities with The Seed, and that's At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. This is of course last year's winner of the International Booker Prize, and I've thought about reading this for a long time. It's about this Senegalese soldier that fights for the French side in World War I, and one day his best friend dies in combat, and the best friend before he dies asks our main character to kill him. And basically the rest of the book is showing you what happens to this soldier after this incident and how he becomes mad. It's written in an understandable way, and the main character talks to us as the reader and describes what he's feeling. And sometimes I feel like this is a bit unnatural because he's actually going insane, and it feels not that likely that he's going to talk to us in the way that he actually does. That being said, it was a highly engaging book, and I felt very sympathetic of how he was thinking and feeling. And as with The Seed, he was good at talking about how he was feeling without actually describing it. Maybe just describing the things around him and what happened without telling us what he did. Something that I usually don't like in books, but I really appreciated in this book, is how repetitive it was at times. And the reason is that it really felt kind of haunting when he repeats things endlessly, and it made me a bit stressed out, which I guess is the point when you're in the middle of a war, and this really helped me like the story. I did not like the book for the plot in particular, but I did like how it made me feel stressed and uncomfortable. Altogether, I thought it was a good book. So these were the books that I thought I would speak about today, and then I'll come back shortly with the rest of them. It just makes me so happy to think about all the books I've read this month, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next wrap-up video. Bye!